Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3, testing, testing. Sounds like the wrong mic. Yeah, that's the wrong mic. Test, 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 1, 2, 3. 11 benevolent elephants. 11 benevolent elephants. Okay. Good. Excellent, in fact. Good morning, fancy meat computers. How is everybody today? I hope everybody's doing a-okay in this, our possibly penultimate lecture stream. Give me some indication that everybody's alive, please. Is anybody watching this from the regular lecture room? There, maybe that's a bit better, a bit off camera, and where my mouth actually is instead of my nose. Ah, there we are. Good morning, everybody. Wonderful. Let me just check to make sure my my voice is still coming through. That's good. Wonderful. So, fancy meat computers, we have a couple of items that we need to have a discussion of prior to getting to our actual lecture material today. It's going to be a bit of a long discussion, so I apologize for that, but they are things that we need to talk about in no uncertain terms. Incidentally, we should be able to finish hash tables today and move on to my favorite type of algorithm, which is graph algorithms. Graphs are just fun, in my opinion. Bookkeeping note number 1, and I haven't posted an announcement about this yet, but I will next Friday, which will be the 18th. I'm going to have to I'm going to have class either canceled or suspended or something. It's either not going to be me, or it's going to be it's going to be not held at all, because I am going to be convocating. That's right, I'm going to actually get my piece of paper that designates me as being a doctor. I'm going to be graduating. That is the day. That is the day of my graduation ceremony in the morning, so I will not be able to attend class. Alternative arrangements will be made. Details to follow. Good. Number 2, we need to have a bit of a talk about the transit strike, the Go Bus transit strike. At the moment, it seems things are working out quite conveniently for that, because my lectures are being streamed online anyway. Yeah, it's kind of interesting. Oh, thank you. I got this email in my inbox today, indicating what the departmental. Well, actually, I think this is coming from the deputy provost. Right, from Vice Provost Teaching and Learning. This has been distributed to all of the chairs of departments, and the chairs of departments have distributed it to us. Basically, our students face uncertainties and anxieties about their academic success when they might not be able to get to class, not able to arrive to the test on time, or not getting to campus at all. So essentially, because of the Go Bus transit strike, which I'm sure some of you have heard of, maybe some of you have even been a victim of, there are a number of things which the department is asking me as the instructor to do, a lot of which I was just already doing, to be completely honest with you. So, number 1, they want lectures to be recorded and made available through recordings, which, you know, I've already been doing. Prepare alternate ways of participating, e.g. online discussion threads on Avenue or To Learn or Teams. Yeah. Arrange for alternate staff if a lab or tutorial instructor isn't available due to illness or the Go Transit strike. So I'll just talk to the TAs about that. Hopefully there'll be minimal disruptions. Include top participation grades, blah, blah, blah. We don't do that. Provide grace periods for handing in work. Be especially aware of how commute affects an early morning class, blah, 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 blah. Most particularly, the office has been stating that they're going to extend the MSAF policy in order to cover people not being able to attend things in person because of the transit strike. So apparently people will be the offices will be issuing additional MSAFs to people who are unduly affected by the transit strike. That's like the big takeaway. Yeah, I take the bus and I have no way to come to school this week. Yeah, so, oh, thank you. That's a lot of congratulations. Thank you, everybody. Yeah, so it shouldn't affect you in this class too awful much. The midterm has already occurred. Please try to be there for the exam. That's like, you know, I understand that it's difficult to be on campus. Hopefully everything's resolved by the exam period. But you know, if it drags on sufficiently long, you know, the exam is something that's going to become problematic for people to get there. And I just like, please try to make the exam, if nothing else, right? Hopefully that's far enough away that we don't have to worry about it. Transit strikes usually don't last too long because, like, you know, if the buses aren't running, that's much more problematic than other types. Like, you know, with a garbage strike, the garbage can pile up for a few weeks before it starts getting really smelly. But if the transit workers go on strike, then they're, like, immediately extremely problematic. So yeah. Any questions about the Go Bus transit strike? I will attempt to answer any questions you may have as well as I can. Hopefully, this makes my this makes the institution's expectations of you somewhat more clear. You are if you can't make it into class, you know, in general in this class, I don't need to hear about it because we're kind of always doing things in such a way that you can still participate in the class anyways. And, like, the whole, you know, discussions thing, we're kind of covering that alternatively through the Piazza Forum. And, you know, like, we don't grade discussions in this class. Like, in some faculties, you actually get a grade, which, you know, is a consequence of your participation in class discussions. This is not that type of a program or a course, so, yeah, don't worry about it. Make sense? Hopefully. The latency seems pretty long here. If you were going to seek me out via, like, an in-person appointment, I will certainly meet with you via Teams or whatever. How much longer do we plan on doing the lectures online? I still need to nail down the details with my lovely wife to see what she thinks about me going back into work next week. But next week was sort of my option week, online if needed, and back to in-person if things are going okay. So I still need to have that discussion, so I will let you guys know. I'll let you guys know as soon as I know. Good. So, in addition to that, we also have another strike to talk about, and no, it's not the EAs provincially, the educational assistants, and it's not the teachers, the, you know, elementary and secondary school teachers. No, we need to talk about the TA strike. Bum bum ba dum boom. So let me just dish some facts. We'll start off with some fact dishing. So CUPE is divided into 2 units at this university. Unit 1 represents TAs and RAs, that is to say, teaching assistants and research assistants. Unit 2 does sessional professors, or sessional instructors, such as myself. The TAs will be in a legal strike position on the 21st of this month. So, so this is going to be somewhat problematic. So, first of all, the probability that the TAs are going on strike is quite high. The negotiations with the university have not been going well from the perception of either side. Both sides are digging in, shall we say, for quite the fight. So the TAs going on strike is considered to be much more likely to happen than not at this point. That's sort of the word coming from on high. So what happens if there is a strike? Well, let's talk about the physical ramifications first. If the TAs go on strike, they will picket around the university, obstructing traffic into and possibly out of, but usually into is sufficient. They will be obstructing traffic into the university. Legally, they cannot completely block access to the university, but they can delay your entry. I'm not sure if they can only delay your entry to campus by 5 minutes, or they can delay each car 5 minutes coming into campus. One of the two of those. One of those is much worse than the other, obviously. At any rate, it is, there's a combination of campus is going to become even less accessible to people living off campus, and, some of you may not wish to cross a picket line, although, to be honest, from a student's perspective, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't want to, there's no reason to, there's essentially no reason to be afraid of the picketers or anything. They're not going to be shouting at you. They will be shouting. So if you just are generally anxious about people holding signs and shouting, then so be it. But they're not shouting at you, right? I would say probably your cause as students is more closely aligned to the TAs than to the university as an institution, since, if any of you wish to become TAs, they are negotiating your future contract at this point in time. So, basically, I imagine a lot of these measures that I mentioned, which are being applied to the transit strike currently ongoing, will apply to the TA strike in the future as well. It seems that the university is attempting to bolster their bargaining position, shall we say, by reenacting some of the COVID policies with respect to distance learning. This is sort of the impression that I get. So, fine, good. So that's the sort of physical impact to campus. The unfortunate problem, and this is where things get a little bit hairy. So you may ask yourself, if the TAs are going on strike, what's going to happen to tutorials, right? What's going to happen to, and that sort of fits into a more broad question, what happens to all of the work that the TAs do? Yeah, what would happen with tutorials and marking of exams or assignments? Precisely. So, basically, the problem is thus. I know this is going to sound like a roundabout way of answering your question, but it requires this context. So, there have been TA strikes in the past, and one thing that seems to happen, or has happened in the past, especially in STEM fields, particularly, is that some of the TAs will choose to work for the university despite the fact that they are on strike, and the university continues to pay them. This is, in union jargon, this is known as scabbing, and it will get you blacklisted by the union. No two ways about it. The impression that the university or the department, this department, has, sort of as an administrative apparatus, is that, shall we say, a large majority of the TAs currently working for the courses will continue to work despite the fact they're on strike. And I have been given instruction by the university that I am not to attempt to influence people one way or the other with respect to this decision. That being said, the TAs have a 95% strike mandate vote, which means that, 19 out of 20 TAs who voted in the strike vote chose to go on strike. Now, it is sometimes true that the vote leans more heavily towards the arts and sociology programs, the sort of squishy subjects, the touchy-feelies. In particular, programs like political science have a lot of union affiliation, and a strike is a good way to get yourself some credentials so that you can be hired on by other unions elsewhere. So, this can be thought of as like a career move for certain people in the university. This is one perspective. The other perspective is that in general, when STEM people vote en masse, they tend to not vote to strike. So, that being said, we are also living through a very interesting and particular point in human history, shall we say, or the history of this nation, at least. I haven't seen the latest figures on inflation, but I don't need to tell people that prices have been going up. Prices, everybody kind of knows that the economists cook the books to give us a inflation number that's not as alarming, but even so, the inflation numbers have been quite alarming, the official ones, and the unofficial inflation numbers, if you sort of go back to the basket of goods that they used to calculate the CPI in the 80s, if you go back to the original basket of goods before its modification, we're sitting at 17% interest or something like that. Or not interest, inflation. 17% inflation, something like that. And as you know, I'm sure, the housing market and the rental market has been far exceeding the pace of inflation. There has been a somewhat of a dip lately, but the rental market always lags the real estate market by some number of years, and you guys are still in the process of catching up to the vastly inflated prices that are currently going on in the property market. I mean, all things being equal, the cost of living is going up extremely rapidly. TA wages were not keeping pace with inflation before all of this, and so, basically it's going to come to a point where they aren't paying TAs enough for it to be worth their effort to actually work, right? So I can see where the union is coming from. Let me just put it that way. So I am not nearly so optimistic as the university about how many TAs are actually going to go on strike. I think that quite a few of them are. I'm also I'm a union guy myself. Not that I'm particularly, I don't necessarily like the idea of unions as a concept, but being in one, it's kind of impossible. You got to play the game if you're in the game, and so if I am permitting people to scab under my supervision, and I'm also a union member, I imagine that makes me a scabber as well. That would make me a scab. Long story short, I have to plan and execute this course past the 21st with zero guarantee of any TA assistance whatsoever. Needless to say, some things are going to change. I teach 3 courses. I have 650 students under my tutelage at this very moment, approximately. I have 13 TAs working for me across all of those courses. Each of my 13 TAs contributes, or at least is supposed to contribute, 10 hours a week to the running of these courses. So essentially, I have at my disposal the equivalent of 4 full-time employees working for me to keep these courses up. The university's approach to this problem is to just say that I have to take on the work of any TAs that leave, basically. It's not going to be physically possible for me to take on all of the work that all of my TAs do, as there are literally not enough hours in the week. If I did nothing but work, if I didn't eat, didn't sleep, didn't do anything except work, I would still not have enough time to do all of this work. So, things are going to change. The nature of upcoming assignments is going to change in anticipation of this problem. I think for this course, we're going to be moving to a sort of avenue quiz type model. I'm not going to make the assignments into actual time-limited quizzes, but I will use the avenue quiz system to distribute assignments because I do not require any TAs to mark those. Tutorials. I cannot possibly satisfy all of the existing tutorial slots, so we will need to move to pre-recorded tutorials, tutorial videos, which you will be free to watch at your leisure. The exam, I must still do the exam. The exam will again be formulated in such a way as to minimize the amount of grading that needs to occur. None of this is ideal. I understand very clearly that this means that you guys basically are going to be getting almost no feedback once the TAs go on strike. So how do you improve? How do I do better on the next assignment if I don't get any feedback on the previous? And the answer that I would give to you is tell the university to give the TAs a deal. Because it's literally not possible for me to do all of this, unfortunately. So, so that's the situation we're in. In order for me, personally, to survive this semester, I'm going to have to throw out everything that isn't nailed down. So, so that's the situation we're in. I regret I do not, I'm not looking forward to it. I know what's going to happen, and it's not going to be pretty. I'm basically going to be, I'm already working 50 hours a week, something's got to give here. And, the understanding, well, the instruction that I've received from the Vice Provost's office is that courses are going to continue with no modification to their quality or content. And that is, just simply not possible in my case. So I'm just going to have to do what I need to do to survive this strike. So, that being said, the midterm and the second assignment are going to be, they are due to be marked before the strike happens. So you will receive those grades in the regular fashion, but past that point, things are going to start looking a little hairy. So, are there any questions about any of that? Give me a thumbs up if you have no questions, or rather than a thumbs up, give me some kind of emoji that expresses your current emotional state, which is kind of the purpose of emojis. If I had to pick one emoji that I share that emotion, it would have to be Kenneth's man exhaling sadly. Or person exhaling sadly. Man in the old sense of the word, which is to say all humans. Alright, so if nobody's got any questions about that, then I guess we're moving on with our lecture material today. Yeah. I will say a couple of things, just from a sort of a strategic perspective, with respect to strike politics. Since classes are going to be going on despite the TA strike, basically the only leverage that the TAs have remaining is you guys. So if you're having a bad time because the TAs are on strike and you are vocal about that with the university, that's leverage for the union. To the degree that I manage to have this course offered in the absence of TAs, that's leverage for the university. So both you fine people and myself are both being put to the squeeze in this labor dispute, which is, not unusual for labor disputes. I'd also like to point out that in recent years, York University also had a TA strike. I think this was like 4 or 5 years ago, something like that. That TA strike went on for a whole calendar year. A whole calendar year. So I'd just like to throw that out there, in case you were thinking that this would be over in a week. It's not going to be over in a week if they go on strike. It'll likely, if it gets resolved, it probably won't get resolved until January. And, basically, if they go on strike now, we might see them back in January. Basically. Okay? Good. So. Right. So, let's talk about hashing. Hash tables. We are just about to wrap up hash tables. So. We were talking about alternatives to the every element in the table links to a linked list type methodology. We were talking about probing methods, where rather than have the table itself linked to an additional data structure, we check, we either slot things into or check adjacent table elements prior to, instead of pointing things out. Could there be a potential that we lose the semester? No, not this semester. No, things are I would be very much surprised if this semester was lost. But then again, I'm not teaching any lab courses, right? So I'll be able to issue my credits, I believe. Yeah. Next semester, I have no idea. But, you know. Don't get, like... I don't think that I know anything I haven't told you. So we were discussing various approaches to probing. The first is linear probing. Linear probing is a simple algorithm, but it results in values sort of being clustered together, right? Quadratic probing addresses this to a degree, but you can still have clustering occur with any values that are not will hash to the same value. These can get quite long. So in theory, we should have some methodology where the different numbers that hash to the same table entry should be jumping around looking for additional slots in different manners. Question, does it mean that the TAs will be on the roads every day until January? Yep. No, not until January, until the strike is over, which might take longer than that, right? At this point, it's hypothesized that, you know, if they go on strike now, they probably won't. They won't not be on strike. The earliest we could see a resolution, in theory, is at the beginning of next semester, but there is absolutely no guarantee that there would be a resolution by the beginning of next semester. So, yeah, it's going to be a cold winter for some of your TAs. So, so that's quadratic probing. We then move on to double hashing, which is one of the best methods available for open addressing. That is to say, the method, again, that does not require additional data structures attached to your hash table. So with double hashing, your initial hash does not change, right? Your first probe into the table remains unaffected, but rather than going linearly or going quadratically, you skip a number of elements equal to the value of I times another hash value, a separate, distinct hash function. So we introduce H2 hashing. So double hashing is one of the best methods available for open addressing. Double hashing uses a hash function of the form h is equal to ki, h at ki is equal to h1k plus I times h2k mod m. Yeah. H1 and H2 are auxiliary good hash function. I'm gonna hold your questions about the strike until I'm finished this this topic. We only have like a couple of slides left. So the initial probe into the table is at t at h1 of k, because remember, the way this works is our first probe, we make a probe. If that cell in the table is occupied, we increment I, and then we make the second probe, right? And we just keep incrementing I until we hit an entry in the table which is unoccupied, and then we insert at that location. So, yes, the offset for the next... So this is very similar to linear indexing, but the you're jumping by the value of some secondary hash. So you can't use the same hash for H1 and H2. The whole point is that the H1 hash will hash the key to a different hash value than H2, right? That way, even if you have a key that two keys that hash to the same hash value according to H1, if they hash to different hash values according to H2, then they're going to be jumping different amounts during the probing process, and that will result in them not clustering, right? It scatters, it randomizes, it prevents the clustering behavior that we saw with both linear and quadratic probing. So, thus, unlike the case of linear or quadratic probing, the probe sequence here depends in two ways upon the key k, since the initial probe position and the offset both vary independently. The performance of double hashing is very close to the performance of an ideal scheme for uniform hashing. So there you go. Here's an example. So let's say that H1 is k mod 17, H2 is k mod 7, and that our double hashing, our double hash is these two guys, the formula previously expressed, mod 13, the size of the table. Suppose we want to store keys 167 and 66 as previously. For k is equal to 100, h at k is 100 mod 17 mod 13, which is still 2, the same way it was in the previous two examples. For 67, because this slot is unoccupied again, it again hashes to 3, just like in previous examples. But 66 is the interesting one. 66, of course, will hash to the same slot that is currently occupied by 100, the same as it did in both previous examples. So, we then increment I and try the next one. So H will be k 1. This will equate to 66 mod 17 plus 66 mod 7 mod 13, which is 15 plus 3 mod 13, which is 5. Therefore, 66 will be put into slot 5 since it's unoccupied. This is a somewhat facile example. It's a little bit small, so we don't get to see the full benefit. For the full benefit, we would need something, a third item that would hash to 100's spot, and we could see that it would hash to something other than the 5th slot here. Good. So, double hashing works better when H2 is a relative prime to the hash table size m for the entire hash table to be searched. One way to let m be prime and to design H2 so that we always... One way is to design... is to let m be a prime number and to design H2 so that it always returns a positive integer less than m. Using mod, for example. For example, we could choose m as being prime and let h1 be equal to k mod m, and then h2 being equal to 1 plus k mod m prime, where m prime is chosen to be slightly less than m, say m minus 1. So going through our example again, I'm just going to skip to 66. So let's imagine we've got k mod 17, which is, of course, a prime number, and then 1 plus k mod 12, right? Going through to the 66 case, we have 66 mod 17 plus 0. Again, hashes to 2. 2 is occupied, so we increment I. 66 mod 17 plus 1 plus 66 mod 12, mod 13. 15 plus 1 plus 6, which is mod 13, which is 9, so 66 goes in slot 5. And that's just a way of improving the sort of randomness of the hash values. So, good. That is the end of hashing. Are there any questions about hash tables? So James is saying they're trying to protect their benefits and their pay, so I agree. Yes. Again, I personally feel that, the cause that the TAs are trying to, the TA cause is probably going to be closer to your interest than the university's cause. Because, so, if you think about employment as being a ladder, right? If it's like the for a lot of people, the first step onto the the rung of the ladder that is like technical jobs is being a TA, right? So you should think of TAing as being like a thing that you might be able to do in the future, right? I'm sure many of you have applied for TA positions. So, if the union gets wrecked by the university, in this case, that's the first rung of that ladder becoming a lot less comfortable, let's say. Of course, there is the argument to be made on the other side, which is that the more expensive TAs are, the fewer of them the university can afford, which means that the quality of education just goes down in general, although, of course, since, according to the vice provost, we don't even need TAs at all to maintain our current standards, so why do we even have them in the first place? But yeah, if TAs are more expensive, then it's more difficult to become one because the university hires fewer of them, possibly, but yeah. What's the starting point that slot 5 counts from? Looks like it counts from the spot of 67. So that's the thing, right? Oh, now here's a question. That's an error, actually, in the slide. Look, 15 plus 1 plus 6 mod 13, right? So that's 22. 22 mod 13 is 9. Therefore, 66 goes in slot 9! 9, 9, 9, 9, 9. That's supposed to be a 9. So, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is actually 6 slots over from 67. 67 plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Make sense? James, but they're already underpaid. Yes, I know. I'm underpaid too. I want more money as well. But it's the opinion of the university that they are overpaid for what they do. All right. So I guess that's our lecture for today. Didn't quite get to graphs, but I hope that you guys, excuse me, don't consider it to be a waste of time talking about the strike, because, you know, it's gonna be a thing. It's gonna be a thing. So we all need to have some contingencies in place. Okay, I'll talk to you guys later.